My name is Emily Carter. I am 28 years old. And yesterday, I sat in a packed auditorium at Columbia University staring at 4 empty chairs. They were not just any seats. They were reserved. Front row. A small white sign taped neatly across them read the Carter family. My parents were supposed to be there. My younger brother too. The people who were supposed to celebrate the biggest achievement of my life. But they never showed up. 2,000 people filled that room. Families laughing. Cameras flashing. Proud voices calling out names. Everywhere I looked, someone had someone. A mother adjusting a robe. A father holding flowers. A sibling cheering too loud. And then there was me. Alone. But I was not nervous. I was not even sad. Because I knew something no one else in that room knew. I knew that in less than 10 minutes, my academic advisor would walk onto that stage. He would open my dissertation. He would turn to one specific page. And when he read it out loud, everything about my family would change forever. Not quietly. Not privately. Publicly. The kind of truth that does not fade. The kind that follows people into every room they enter for the rest of their lives. I sat there in complete silence, hands folded in my lap, watching those empty chairs. For years, I had begged for their attention. Their approval. Their support. Yesterday, I did not need any of it. Because I was no longer the daughter waiting to be chosen. I was the one about to tell the truth. 48 hours before that ceremony, I was standing in my small apartment in Manhattan, carefully steaming my graduation robe. It was the kind of moment you imagine for years. The final stretch. The finish line after everything you have sacrificed. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Mom. I remember smiling for a second. Not because we were close, but because I thought maybe this time would be different. Maybe she was calling to ask what time they should arrive. Maybe she was finally going to show up for me. I picked up. Hey Mom, I said. Her voice was light. Casual. Almost distracted. Emily, honey, we have a bit of a situation. I felt something in my chest tighten immediately. Your father and I are not going to make it to the ceremony tomorrow. There was a pause. Not on her end. On mine. Jason moved his investor event to the same afternoon. It is really important. He is under a lot of pressure right now. Jason. Of course it was Jason. My younger brother. The one my parents always described as brilliant. Visionary. Destined for something big. I stood there holding the phone, staring at the steam rising from my robe. Mom, I said slowly, the university reserved seats for you. My advisor is expecting to meet you. Emily, please do not make this difficult, she replied. Your graduation is just a formality. You already finished. Jason needs us right now. Just a formality. 6 years of work. Night shifts. Missed holidays. Living paycheck to paycheck. Reduced to a formality. You understand, right, she added. I closed my eyes for a moment. And that was the thing. I did understand. I understood exactly where I stood in this family. Okay, Mom, I said quietly. I hung up before she could say goodbye. I did not cry. I just stood there in silence, listening to the soft hum of the steamer, realizing that nothing had changed. And nothing ever would. If you looked at my life and my brother Jason's life side by side, you would think we grew up in 2 completely different families. Jason was 3 years younger than me, but somehow, he had always been treated like the center of the universe. At 25, he called himself a startup founder. He wore expensive jackets, worked from trendy coffee shops, and talked about things like scaling, market disruption, and investor pipelines. If you asked him what his app actually did, you would get a long explanation that sounded impressive but never really said anything. Still, my parents believed in him completely. They called him driven. Visionary. The future of the family. My reality looked very different. While Jason was pitching ideas over lattes, I was working overnight shifts at a psychiatric clinic just to pay rent. My days and nights blurred together. Fluorescent lights. Long hours. Patients in crisis. Constant exhaustion. I lived on cheap groceries. Rice. Eggs. Whatever I could stretch through the week. My apartment was small, drafty, and always just a little too cold in the winter. Most nights, I slept maybe 5 hours. Sometimes less. But I kept going because I had a goal. I was earning my doctorate in clinical psychology, one step at a time. The difference between us was not hidden. It was obvious. It was discussed openly at family dinners like it was completely normal. Jason needed support because he was building something big. I needed to struggle because it was building character. Imagine working every single day just to survive, while watching someone else live comfortably on resources that seemed to appear out of nowhere. That was my life. And the hardest part was not the exhaustion. It was knowing that the imbalance was not accidental. It was chosen. The first time I truly understood how deep the imbalance went was not at a holiday dinner or a casual conversation. It happened on the side of a highway. It was late November. Cold. Rain coming down hard enough to blur the road. I was driving back from a night shift, exhausted, trying to stay focused. Then my car made a sound I had never heard before. A sharp clunk. The engine jerked. The steering wheel stiffened in my hands. Within seconds, smoke started rising from under the hood. I managed to pull over onto the shoulder, heart pounding, hands shaking. Cars rushed past me in the rain while I sat there staring at the dashboard, realizing I had no idea how I was going to fix this. The mechanic later gave me the estimate. $2,000. I did not have $200. I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment before finally picking up my phone and calling my dad. He answered quickly. I explained everything. The breakdown. The cost. The situation. I told him I was not asking for a gift. Just a temporary loan. I would pay him back, even if it took time. There was a long pause. Then he sighed. Emily, we are not a bank. You need to learn how to manage your finances better. I felt my grip tighten on the phone. Dad, I just need help getting to work safely, I said. You can take the subway, he replied. It builds character. Character. That was the word he chose. I hung up the call and paid for the tow truck using a credit card I should not have been using. For the next year and a half, I relied on public transportation. Late nights. Long rides. Cold platforms. And then, 1 week later, I went home for Thanksgiving. Jason pulled into the driveway in a brand new car. My dad smiled as he handed him the keys. He needs something reliable, he said proudly. I stood there in silence, realizing something I could no longer ignore. This was not about money. It was about who they believed was worth investing in. The moment everything nearly fell apart came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in the university library, surrounded by textbooks and notes, trying to focus on a research paper when I saw a new email notification. Subject line funding status update. I opened it without thinking. And then I stopped breathing. Due to departmental budget changes, your financial support has been discontinued effective immediately. Outstanding tuition balance $25,000. Payment required within 48 hours to maintain enrollment. 48 hours. I read it again. And again. It did not change. I checked my bank account. $312. That was everything I had. My hands started to shake as I sat there staring at the screen, trying to process what this meant. Years of work. Endless nights. Everything I had built was about to disappear because of one number I could not reach. I stepped outside into the hallway, trying to think clearly. There was only one option left. I did not want to make that call. I already knew how it would go. But I made it anyway. Dad answered. I explained the situation. The funding cut. The deadline. I told him I was not asking for money. I just needed him to co-sign a loan so I could stay in the program. It was a simple request. A signature. He did not hesitate. No. I stood there in silence, waiting for him to explain. Emily, this is not a good investment, he continued. That degree is not practical. You should take this as a sign to move on and find something stable. Something stable. Like working for Jason. In fact, he added, your brother could use help managing his schedule. It would be a good opportunity for you. I felt something inside me go completely still. You want me to quit my doctorate and work for him, I said. It would help the family, he replied calmly. I hung up the phone. Not in anger. Not in tears. Just in silence. Because in that moment, everything became clear. I was not part of the plan. I was the sacrifice. That night, I sat alone in my apartment staring at my laptop screen. The withdrawal form was open. One click. That was all it would take to erase 4 years of my life. I had already filled everything out. My student ID. My department. Reason for withdrawal. Financial hardship. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I remember thinking how quiet everything felt. No dramatic moment. No one there to stop me. Just a simple decision that would change everything. I closed my eyes for a second. And then my email notification sound went off. I almost ignored it. But something made me click it. Subject line notice of account resolution. I frowned and opened the message. Dear Emily Carter, your outstanding tuition balance has been paid in full. In addition, an anonymous donor has established a grant to cover your remaining academic expenses and provide a modest living stipend for the duration of your program. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time. It did not make sense. I checked the sender. It was real. The University Financial Office. My balance was 0. Not reduced. Not delayed. Gone. I sat there in complete silence, trying to understand what I was looking at. Someone I did not know had just saved my entire future. No explanation. No name. No conditions. Just help. For the first time in months, I felt something shift inside me. Not relief. Something stronger. Clarity. If a stranger could believe I was worth saving, then maybe it was time I started believing that too. After that email, something in me changed. Not in a loud, dramatic way. Quietly. Completely. I stopped calling my parents. I stopped showing up to family dinners where I felt like a guest in someone else's life. I stopped asking about Jason, his business, or anything happening in that house. And the strange part was, they did not reach out either. No questions. No concern. No curiosity about how I was still in school after everything that happened. They assumed I had figured something out. And for once, I let them be wrong. With the financial pressure lifted, my life shifted into something I had never experienced before. Stability. I started sleeping full nights instead of short, broken hours. I bought groceries without calculating every dollar in my head. I fixed my car. Small things. But they changed everything. My focus sharpened. My work improved. I was no longer surviving. I was building. I poured everything into my studies. Research. Clinical hours. Publications. And for the first time, people started noticing. Professors respected me. My advisor trusted me. Opportunities opened. But through all of it, I stayed quiet. I did not celebrate publicly. I did not update my family. I did not try to prove anything to anyone. I was no longer chasing validation. I was becoming someone who did not need it. Every year, I was required to submit a progress report to the anonymous donor through a law office in the city. I treated it like a ritual. Careful. Precise. Grateful. I never knew who was reading those reports. But I knew one thing for sure. Someone out there believed in my future. And I was not going to waste it. In my final year, I chose a dissertation topic that felt personal, even if I did not fully admit it at the time. Financial control inside families. Specifically, how money can be used to manipulate, isolate, and quietly destroy one member while protecting another. At first, it was just research. Case studies. Legal records. Patterns. But the deeper I went, the more familiar everything started to feel. The language. The behavior. The logic behind it. It all sounded like my life. So I built a tracking model to follow financial records across public databases. Property filings. Business registrations. Probate documents. It was meant to be academic. Objective. But one night, sitting alone in the library, I typed in two names without thinking. Michael Carter. Linda Carter. My parents. The system pulled up standard results first. Their house. Mortgage history. Jason's business registration. Nothing unusual. Until a flagged record appeared. Probate court. 10 years ago. The year my aunt passed away. I clicked the document. It was a full estate report. And within seconds, everything in my body went cold. There was a trust. $300,000. And my name was listed as the sole beneficiary. I stared at the screen, barely breathing. I had never heard of this. Not once. The document was clear. The funds were meant to support my education once I reached adulthood. I scrolled further. And then I saw the withdrawals. 5 years ago. Large transfers. Authorized not by me, but by my parents. My hands started shaking as I read the attached petition they had filed. They claimed I was unstable. That I had cut off contact. That I was incapable of managing the funds responsibly. They had convinced a court to give them control. And then they moved the money into Jason's company. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. Every moment I struggled. Every time I asked for help and was denied. They already had the money. My money. And they chose not to use it. That was the moment everything shifted. I was not just overlooked. I was erased. I sat in that library for a long time after I found the truth. Not crying. Not panicking. Just thinking. There are moments in life where everything becomes very simple. Not easy, but clear. I had proof. 70 pages of legal documents. Signatures. Dates. Transfers. Every detail lined up perfectly. I could have gone to a lawyer immediately. Filed a lawsuit. Handled everything quietly. That would have been the logical move. But I knew my parents. They did not fear consequences. They feared exposure. They cared about how people saw them. Their reputation. Their image. The carefully built version of themselves they presented to the world. If I handled this privately, they would deny it. Minimize it. Turn it into a misunderstanding. And somehow, I would still end up being the problem. No. That was not going to happen. For the first time in my life, I stopped thinking about how to protect them. And started thinking about how to tell the truth. Publicly. My graduation ceremony was 3 months away. 2,000 people. Faculty. Families. Colleagues. A stage. A microphone. An audience that believed in integrity, achievement, and truth. It was the perfect place. I did not rush. I did not confront them. I did not give them a chance to prepare. I gathered everything carefully. Printed every document. Organized every detail. And then I did one more thing. I wrote the dedication page of my dissertation. Not to thank them, but to tell the truth. I closed my laptop that night knowing exactly what I was going to do. For years, they controlled the narrative. Now it was my turn. The auditorium was silent by the time my advisor walked onto the stage. Professor Daniel Brooks was not the kind of man who added drama to anything. He was calm. Precise. Respected. When he spoke, people listened. He adjusted the microphone and looked out across the crowd, then down at the front row. At me. Today, we recognize a student whose work stands out not only for its academic excellence, but for its depth and truth, he began. My heart was steady. I knew what was coming. He lifted my dissertation slightly. Emily Carter's research focuses on financial control within families and the long-term psychological impact of systemic neglect. There was a polite wave of applause. Then he paused. And opened the first page. Normally, a dedication is a short message of gratitude, he continued. This one is different. The room shifted. Something in his tone made people stop moving. Stop whispering. Stop looking at their phones. He took a breath and began to read. I dedicate this work to my parents, Michael and Linda Carter, who could not attend today because they chose to support my brother's business event instead. A few scattered chuckles faded quickly. I thank them for teaching me resilience by withholding support during the most critical moments of my life. The silence deepened. I thank them for refusing to help me continue my education while they controlled a $300,000 trust fund that was legally left to me. No one moved. I thank them for transferring those funds into my brother's company while I worked night shifts to survive. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Clear. Impossible. To ignore. No yelling. No accusation. Just truth. I sat there, hands folded, looking straight ahead. Behind me, I could feel the entire room holding its breath. Because in that moment, everyone understood. This was not a speech. It was evidence. The silence that followed felt almost unreal. No applause. No movement. Just thousands of people trying to process what they had just heard. And then, from the front row, a chair shifted. A man stood up. Professor Richard Hale. Head of the neurology department. Known for being composed, analytical, and almost impossible to read. Except now, he was not composed. He walked slowly toward the stage, his expression tight, his steps deliberate. Professor Brooks stepped aside without saying a word. Richard reached the microphone and looked out at the audience, then down at me. Emily, he said, his voice steady but heavy, there is something the audience needs to understand. The room went completely still again. Your aunt, the one who established that trust, was someone I knew very well. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. We were engaged many years ago, he continued. And when she became ill, she asked me to oversee her estate to make sure her wishes were protected. I felt my chest tighten. He turned slightly, addressing the room. When the petition came in from your parents requesting control of that trust, I challenged it. I asked to speak with Emily directly. He paused. They provided documentation claiming she was unstable and unreachable. A quiet wave of disbelief spread across the audience. The court approved the transfer. I had no legal authority to stop it. He looked back at me. But I could not ignore what I believed was wrong. So when your funding was cut, I stepped in. Another pause. I am the one who paid your tuition. A soft gasp moved through the room. I am the one who established the grant. For a moment, everything felt suspended. The anonymous support. The timing. The silence. It all made sense. And for the first time, the story was not just about what had been taken from me. It was about who chose to give something back. What happened next did not unfold inside that auditorium. It happened online. Within hours, someone had uploaded a clip of the ceremony. The dedication. The statements. The moment Professor Hale spoke. It spread faster than I expected. At first, it was shared within academic circles. Students. Faculty. Alumni groups. Then it moved beyond that. People started asking questions. Names were searched. Public records were pulled. The same documents I had found were now being discussed by strangers across the country. The story was simple. A daughter denied support. A hidden trust fund. Parents who took it. And a brother whose business had been built on that money. Jason's company was the first to feel it. Investors started calling. Not to congratulate him, but to ask for clarification. Where the funding came from. Whether there were legal risks involved. Within a day, meetings were cancelled. Within a week, financial backing disappeared. Reputation matters more than potential in those circles. And once doubt enters the room, it does not leave. My parents tried to respond. Calls. Messages. Emails from numbers I did not recognize. Urgent. Demanding. Panicked. Take it down. You are misunderstanding. This is being twisted. But the truth was already out there. And it did not belong to me anymore. I did not respond. For the first time in my life, I was not trying to fix something they had broken. I simply stepped back and let reality unfold. Because consequences do not need to be forced. They arrive on their own. A week later, my lawyer received a request. My mother wanted to meet. 10 minutes. Private. Neutral location. My lawyer advised against it. She said people rarely take responsibility in situations like this. They look for ways to shift blame, to regain control. But I agreed. Not because I needed closure. Because I wanted to see who she was without the image she had spent years protecting. We met in a small conference room downtown. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. No polished appearance. No confidence. Just tension and exhaustion. She sat down across from me, avoiding eye contact. We are signing everything, she said quietly. The house is being sold. The money will be returned. I nodded once. Then she looked up, and for a moment, the old tone came back. I hope you are satisfied. You destroyed this family. I did not react. You committed fraud, I said calmly. I told the truth. Her expression tightened. We were trying to help Jason, she insisted. You were always independent. You could handle yourself. I let the silence sit between us. Then I reached into my bag and placed a check on the table. $100. She frowned. What is this? I met her eyes. For transportation, I said. When my car broke down, I asked for help. I was told to take the train and build character. She went completely still. Use it, I added. It might help now. Her composure collapsed after that. I stood up, turned, and walked out. No anger. No hesitation. Just the quiet understanding that the conversation was over. For good. 3 years have passed since that day. My life looks nothing like it did before. I now work as an assistant professor of clinical psychology. I teach, conduct research, and mentor students who remind me of who I used to be. Focused. Tired. Determined. But no longer alone. My work centers on the very topic that once defined my life from the outside. Financial control within families. Emotional neglect that hides behind stability. Except now, I study it with distance. Clarity. And control. Outside of work, my life is quiet in the best way. I wake up without anxiety sitting in my chest. I make decisions without second-guessing my worth. I spend time with people who show up, not just when it is convenient, but when it matters. I also met someone. Ethan is not part of my past. He does not try to fix it or rewrite it. He listens. He respects boundaries. He builds instead of taking. When we got married last fall, we kept it simple. Small ceremony. Close friends. No expectations. There was no reserved seating for my parents. And for the first time in my life, that absence did not feel like something missing. It felt like space. Space for something healthier. Something real. I walked forward into that new life without looking back. Because I was no longer trying to prove anything. I was simply living it. Before I end this story, I want to step out of it for a moment and speak directly to you. Because this is not just about me. A lot of people are taught that family means unconditional loyalty. That no matter what happens, you stay, you tolerate, you forgive. But that idea can be dangerous when it keeps you stuck in a place where you are constantly undervalued. Here is what I learned. First, being related to someone does not automatically mean they respect you. Respect is built through actions, not shared last names. Second, you cannot grow in an environment that depends on you staying small. If someone benefits from your struggle, they are not supporting you. They are using you. Third, your worth does not come from how others treat you. Especially not from people who have already decided who you are allowed to be. And finally, silence protects the wrong people. For years, I stayed quiet to keep the peace. But the truth is, there was never any peace. Just control. If you see yourself in any part of this story, you do not need permission to step away from what is hurting you. You are allowed to build a life that feels stable, respectful, and real. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And let me know in the comments what part stayed with you the most. Take care of yourself.